Good morning and welcome to, I'll rename it Terrific Tuesday. This is lesson 2.5, solving equations involving absolute value. So let's just do a quick review and remember what absolute value is. Absolute value is the distance or how far a number is from zero on the number line. Now this little statement that they wrote here, the absolute value of a number is always positive. I do not agree with it, and we talked about this earlier in the year. Please remember there is an exception. The absolute value of any positive number is positive. The absolute value of any negative number is positive, but the absolute value of zero is zero, and zero is neither positive or negative. So we're going to start out real simple and easy just by substituting some numbers into the absolute value symbols and working them. So in your notes, you are on page 8. I am doing example 1. That is in your notes. I will later follow that up with example 2, but give you all an opportunity to try as well. Okay, example number 1. Example number 1, let me just go ahead. I think I didn't mean to work it out totally and completely, so let's get rid of bits. The absolute value of t minus 5 minus 7 if t equals 3. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to substitute the value of 3 in for t. So I'm going to write this as the absolute value of 3 minus 5 minus 7. Please remember, we treat the absolute value symbol like parentheses. So using order of operations, we would make sure we take care of that first. So what's 3 minus 5, guys? So we have the absolute value of negative 2 minus 7. We all know that the absolute value of negative 2 is, and we know that 2 minus 7 equals negative 5. Are you with me? Does anyone have a question? Pretty simple, straightforward, yes? Okay, it's just basically take it and substitute it in. So let's let you all try one. Again, that problem is in your notes. Now, if they ask us to go ahead and to, well, actually not quite here, but in the next couple of problems, they're going to ask us to go ahead and graph the answer. So we'll look at that in a minute. Let's try another easy problem. This says the absolute value of r plus n minus 7. Now, r equals negative 2. N equals negative 3. Y'all have that? So I want you guys, that is in your notes on page 7, so you can feel free to work it right there if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and freeze the screen. I'll work it out while you're working it out, and let's see if we all get the same answer. You may do number 2 as well. Who has them both worked out? Yes, question.
For letter T, is that a point negative 3?
Letter T equals positive 3. That's positive 3.
Okay.
T equals 3. Okay, does everybody have number 1? Yes? Okay, who would like to share their answer for number 1? Christian, what did you get? Negative 2. I agree with you. I also got negative 2. So we substitute in for R a negative 2, for N a negative 3. We're going to have some storms. It's okay. A negative 2 plus a negative 3 is negative 5. That's in absolute value. The absolute value of negative 5 is 5. 5 minus 7 is negative 2. Does anyone have a question on that one? Okay, how about number 2? Somebody else want to share their answer. What did you get, Nicholas? 4. That's a good try. I can see how you got that. Let's go ahead and see if we can correct that. Did you use t as positive 3? Okay, so what does n equal? No, n equals negative 3. So what's a negative 3 minus 3 give you? Good, so correct it, and then you can come back and give me the answer. Come on, guys, he caught exactly what he did. Let's give him a chance. Okay, well, I'm going to show you the answer. 10 is correct, so let's go ahead and show you. So we have a negative 3 minus 3. A negative 3 minus 3 is the same thing as a negative 3 plus a negative 3, which is negative 6. The absolute value of negative 6 is 6. 6 plus 4 is 10. What you did is you took the absolute value of negative 6 and said it was negative 6. The absolute value of a negative number is always positive. Does that help? Does anyone have a question? Are you sure? Okay, let's go ahead and look at our next example here that I want to talk about. This next set of rules is on page 8 in your notes. When solving absolute value equations, there are 2 cases. Case 1, remove the absolute value symbol and solve. Case 2, remove the absolute value symbol and change the sign after the equal sign. It's going to make more sense as I work it with you. I'm going to do the problem that's in your notes on top of page 8 labeled example 1. It is worked out for you. I'm going to work it out in front of you. So my problem is the absolute value of x plus 4 equals 1. The directions on these tonight will say solve and graph the solution. So look up here and remember what I have right up there for you. There are 2 cases. Case 1, remove the absolute value symbol and rewrite the equation. So case 1 would be solve x plus 4 equals 1. Case 2, remove the absolute value symbol and change the sign of the number after the equal sign. Since the 1 was positive, case 2 would be x plus 4 equals negative 1. So when I solve case 1, I get x equals negative 3. When I solve case 2, I get x equals negative 5. Are you with me? Yes? Okay, now let's manually plug this back in. Let's take negative 3, plug it in, and let's see if it works. What's a negative 3 plus 4 give you? And the absolute value of 1 is 1. So that worked. Let's plug in negative 5. What's a negative 5 plus 4 give you? Negative 1. And what's the absolute value of negative 1? So you solved it correctly. Yes, question? You have to do both cases. There are always going to be, look and listen, 2 answers, 2 cases. Okay, and your answers are going to go in set builder notation. So your answers would look like this. Negative 3, negative 5, 4, negative 5, negative 3. There's one last part to this problem because you were supposed to graph it. So the graph should look something like this. Okay, so your solution is negative 3 and negative 5. You're just going to make a closed circle above negative 5 and another closed circle above negative 3. Does that make sense? Okay, let's look at the problem again. When solving an absolute value equation, please remember there are always 2 cases. Look at the original problem. Case 1, remove the absolute value symbols, rewrite it, and solve. Case 2, remove the absolute value symbol and change the sign of the number after the equal sign. Okay? After you do that, make sure you plug them back in. Your answer goes in set builder notation, and then go ahead and graph your answer. How about if you guys try this one? You guys all try. The absolute value of f plus 5 equals 17. The absolute value of f plus 5 equals 17. Come on, everybody, try it. I was nice. I wrote case 1 and case 2 for you. When I go to graph it, I'm not going to put every number because I'm not going to make this graph like really that huge. So you can count by fives, or you can do whatever you have to do to just go ahead and estimate, and that is fine. Are you with me? You don't have to label numbers from a broad variety here. Does everybody have the answer to number 1? Yes? Did you get 2 answers? Did you plug them back in to make sure they make sense and work? Did you graph it? Did you put your answer in set builder notation? Okay, what did you get for an answer? Who'd like to share? Thank you. What did you get?
For case 1, I got 12, or f equals 12. For case 2, I got f equals -3.
I totally agree. -22. So case 1 is f plus 5 equals 17. Subtract 5 from each side, f equals 12. Case 2, f plus 5 equals, remember to change the sign, -17. Subtract 5 from each side, f equals -22. So I went by fives. I estimated between -20 and -25, and I put my dot at -22. And then between 10 and 15, I put a dot at 12. Are you with me? Yes? Anybody have a question? I think this is extremely straightforward. All you have to do is remember that there are always how many cases? 2 cases. Okay, the last example that I'd like to do for you today is right over here. To write an equation involving absolute value from a graph, the first thing we are going to do is find the midpoint. Okay? The equation is going to be the absolute value of x minus the midpoint equals the distance in each direction. This is in your notes. This is on page 8. I'm just going to label that 1 and 2 because I don't want anybody to think that was a negative sign. Okay, so let me just fix this for you guys. So this is step 1, and this is step 2. Okay, so what they're going to do here is this time you're going to take the problem and work it backwards. So what they've done here is they've given you a graph, and there are 2 points graphed. The points are -2 and +4. Are you with me? So we want to find what's the point halfway between -2 and -4. Well, you can add them together and divide by 2. Isn't that how you find the midpoint? So we could say -2 plus 4 over 2, which is 2 over 2 or 1. So the midpoint should be right here, which is 1. If you're not sure, you can count three spaces this way, 3 spaces this way. Are you all with me? So the midpoint equals 1. Your equation is x minus the absolute value of x minus the midpoint equals the distance in each direction. Well, how many spaces was it to go from the midpoint of 1 to positive 4? How many spaces, guys? 3. How many spaces was it to go from the midpoint 1 to negative 2? So the equation that you would write based on the directions that I gave you would be the absolute value of x minus the midpoint, which was 1, equals how far you went from the midpoint to the right, how far you went from the midpoint to the left, which is 3. And there's the equation. So it's just taking the concept that we did previously and reversing it. This time they're giving you the answer. They want you to write the equation. How about if you guys try one? Yes? So one more time, it's in your notes and I've written it here. To write an equation involving absolute value from a graph. Step 1, find the midpoint. To find the midpoint, add the 2 points and divide by 2. Step number 2, your equation is, sorry, this got erased. It's the absolute value of x minus the midpoint equals the distance you've traveled in each direction. So here you go. You try. Write an equation involving absolute value for the graph below. Okay, the 2 points that I graphed were negative 7 and positive 1. So step number 1, find the midpoint. Check your answer with a friend. Plug the solutions back into the equation. They should make it right. Correct? Okay, one more time. Find the midpoint. To find the midpoint, look at the 2 points that are on your graph. Add them together and divide by 2. Then your equation is the absolute value of x minus whatever your midpoint is. Remember that minus a negative becomes plus a positive, equals the distance from the midpoint to the point on the right, the distance from the midpoint to the point on the left, which is the same number of spaces. Do we have an answer? Who would like to share their answer? Anybody? What did you get for your equation? Right here, yes. The absolute value of x plus 3 equals 4 is correct. Great job. Does anyone have a question on today's lesson? There are a couple of things that you need to memorize, so you need to make sure you memorize what you're going to do here to write an equation involving absolute value. You also need to memorize that there are 2 cases, yes? Okay, so real quickly, let me just make sure everybody knows what their homework is. Your homework is the practice pages that I gave you yesterday. It's practice page 2-5. It is 1 through 12, all And I would still prefer that you do them on notebook paper. Just let me make sure. 2.5. Yes, because there's not going to be enough room. You can do the graphs on notebook paper as well. Are there any questions? Yes.
So when you had equations for x and value, how come it was negative but you did, but the second time it was positive?
Because it was minus a negative 3. Because the midpoint was negative 3. So the absolute value of x minus a negative 3 became the absolute value of x plus 3. You're welcome.